You knew you weren't alone. Your adversary had yet to return to claim their coffee, but you didn't sense them.
What direction will they be coming from?
You fretted, back pressed securely to the wall. Suddenly you heard an audible yawn, and relaxed.
If the person knew I was here, they wouldn't have given away their position like that.
In stillness you remained for another moment.
Unless it's a trap.
Opting for a safe retreat, you backtracked through the dining room, heading away from the voice. You eventually found yourself walking through a long corridor, windows lining one side and doors along the other. Your small-range end encirclement immediately caught wind of aura behind one of the expensive wooden doors. Your initial hypothesis had been correct. Lovely Ghost Rider had left a literal paper trail of Nen for you to uncover. Your stomach sank upon seeing the automated numerical lock hanging from said door.
Of course.
It was all you could do to not roll your eyes. It's not as if you could break it open. The man in the parlor would definitely hear. Not only that, but your stratagem was aimed at getting in and out of the house without raising alarm, nor leaving traces of evidence in your wake. If word of a break-in got back to Melody, surely there'd be no hiding your guilt, and it'd be curtains for both you and Kurapika. It seemed misfortune was your lot this evening, as it was now that a set of impending footsteps tickled your eardrums.
Shit!
Your position was dead center in the long hallway. Even if you ran now, you wouldn't make it out of sight in time. You had no choice but to send a mosquito flying around the corner. It broke his skin just in time, for not a full second later did he come waltzing straight in your direction.
Yep, that has to be Dolzolne.
There was no doubt in your mind once you saw him. His pointy black hair matched the ebony sweater hanging from his broad shoulders. The tattoos on his cheekbones only augmented the bags beneath his slit-like eyes. And in the dim moonlit cast, the sword on his hip reflected a silvery glow. Everything about this man felt sharp, like he was built to inflict pain. It was intimidating, to say the least, and you thanked every deity above that you managed to get the drop on him. The burly man halted when your illusion took effect, and suddenly a delicious idea spawned in the heat of your adrenaline.
Hey! Who are you?
Dolzolne pointed in your direction, and you almost faltered. As your focus cultivated, his eyes saw a ghostly apparition. A young woman you saw on the street this afternoon. Her translucent form smiled at him, and faded right through the locked door.
Hey! Stop right there!
Frantically, he chased the woman, pressing the correct code and flinging himself into the room. You slipped your body in right behind him, before the door swung shut from its own weight.
Hello?
He looked around the dim room, full of filing cabinets and a chestnut desk. The phantom had vanished. He took a moment to purse his lips in confusion at his drink, before turning on his heels, taking care to drop the cup into the waste bin on his way back out the door, completely unaware of your presence.
Piece of cake.
You smiled to yourself and eyed the room for potential security cameras. There were none, or at least none that you could see. You knelt before one of the drawers and quietly slid it open.
I sure hope they're sorted by date, or this is going to take a long time.
Fortunately, that appeared to be the case, and you immediately started pulling files from 3 years ago. A half hour definitely passed while you were reading, and your anxiety was beginning to set in. No doubt after a weird hallucination like that, Dolzolne would be on alert. He would come back any minute now.
There's nothing useful here. Maybe if I pull from a month before.
After reading 8 more, something finally caught your eye. Perfect. Kurapika paced the floor of the penthouse. Not only had he dropped Neon in her room a while ago, they had even gone out after to fetch her food as well. It had been far too long since he received any word on your condition, or your whereabouts. The only thing he possessed was an odd cryptic message and an increasingly distressed conscience. He scoured the city from the window for any signs of you, though it was a fruitless endeavor. The street couldn't be seen from that height, or at least not without pressing one's forehead right against the glass. Some mixture between relief and irritation overtook the blonde when the door finally swung open.
Kurapika,
what happened? He demanded instantly, and you heard his voice through the entryway before you even saw where he was standing.
Did you get my message?
Yes. He furrowed his brows at you. But no checkpoints? No call once you were out? Seriously, how reckless can you be? His voice was hardly raised, but it was clear he was scolding you like an impudent child. You couldn't help but be a little bit flattered.
Did I worry you?
He paused his reprimand. It seemed like he was knocked off his guard by the sweet way you asked the question. It struck him as almost insinuating. You didn't stick to the plan, he replied coldly.
You're right, I'm sorry. I was just too anxious to share my findings with you.
You mean the one you sent me? He saw you nod eagerly, and Kurapika made a face. Traveler. He didn't want to disparage your hard work, especially after he had put you in danger, but there was certainly no lead there. He'd realized during his tormenting wait that he'd made a crucial mistake. You had informed him of the attack 3 years prior, and that one of the Spider's members had been killed.
That's why she thinks it's 7.
The awakening had hit him hard and fast in the gut, and he couldn't blame you at all for the mistake. It was foolish of him to assume that you knew there were 12 members instead of 8. Egregious, in fact. The only reason he knew was because of how deeply he had studied their ways. He only discovered it when he happened upon a depiction of the tattoo itself in a discarded newspaper, and realized his folly when he counted its legs.
I wrote it down on the ride back here. Let's go over it by each line.
Kurapika's guilty grimace tightened as you continued on unfazed. With 7 legs it crawls. I think that means traveler. He repeated your name solemnly, and you looked at him.
What, Pika?
You do know the spider has 12 legs, not 8. The words tiptoed off his tongue delicately.
Yeah?
You narrowed your eyes at him. Not to mention, spiders are arachnids, not insects. This can't refer to the tower attack 3 years ago because all 12 members were involved. This isn't referring to that incident. I'm sorry, Traveler. He frowned sympathetically. After being gone for that long, he could only imagine how difficult it had been for you to procure the item.
Yeah, I know.
You shrugged, and he blinked in confusion. Don't you remember what I said a few days ago? About the attack on the railway? He tilted his head. According to this, 7 members attacked that night. And that means one of those members is the one that was assassinated. He finished your sentence, looking utterly stunned at the revelation.
Look, I can prove it. I have the second verse.
On the edge of the piano you flattened the crinkled paper and laid it before him. With 7 legs it crawls. By new moon's end will be an insect. Beneath the earth the begonia blooms. Fear not its roots above the ground. But when the calendar fulfills, take shelter below, lest your requiem forsooth be sung by the rubble above.
I wasn't certain of this until now, but this confirms that the railway attack had 7 members present. Beneath the earth, it says. That proves this wasn't the attack on the tower.
I'm sorry for doubting you.
Did you really think I didn't know there were 12 members?
Well, I didn't know at first either, he admitted. And I realized we never really talked about it.
Can you imagine if I went through all of that for nothing?
That's what I was worried about.
Ha! So you were worried about me.
You say that like it's a crime.
Not at all.
You grinned in satisfaction before returning to the task at hand. Anyway, I'm not sure what the begonia analogy means. If I'm not mistaken, begonias were once used in the art of polishing swords. I'm amazed that you know that. You shook your head in awe. Fear not its roots above the ground, you mumbled aloud. Clearly this is a warning. You're right. I believe it's telling him not to go underground until New Moon's End, I guess? You didn't have to say another word before Kurapika whipped out his laptop and started scribbling down lunar patterns surrounding the incident. Look up some stuff about begonias while you're at it. He nodded, and his pale fingers soared across the keys. According to the Dictionary of Botany, begonia means be cautious. Oh, look up what time of year they blossom. June or July, it says. Immediately you notice newspaper articles appearing on his screen, confirming the dates of the slaughter and corresponding robberies. He seemed to be satisfied with the findings, for he shot you a significant glance, urging you to continue. The next part talks about the calendar being fulfilled. This could be all 12 members. Naturally. He finished your sentence for you. Kurapika's eyes seemed to sparkle with fervor. He clearly needed no more convincing of this fortune's ties to the spider. He abandoned his laptop to look over your shoulder and read the rest along with you. It says, "Take shelter below." I think it's safe to assume that the requiem this is referring to is the tower attack. This fortune predicts he'll die in it. Not directly. You pointed to the last line. It says he'll be crushed by the rubble falling from the explosion. Amazing. He beamed at the paper. It lines up perfectly with the story you told me a few days ago. I find it hard to believe it's just a coincidence. He smiled that cunning Kurapika smile. You found a good lead, traveler. Thanks. But it all depends on whether this guy heeded her advice or not. You were elated to finally receive his praise. Perhaps he'd be less hesitant on letting you help him from here on out, since you'd more than proved your competence. But there's one thing I can't figure out in all this. What's that? Who names their Doberman Butterball? To be continued.